the talks that you're going to hear tonight look, to my mind, to be really refreshing and interesting. I can take no credit for that, purely down to the presenters. I'm sure you're going to find it of value. Now, the Zero Carbon Group is part of the Environment Group, as Jim said, and the other components of the Environment Group, as you're aware, are sustainable water, wildlife, and zero waste. And we're working on a number of fronts to combat climate change. A couple of little bits of news before we get into it. If you've never been to one of our environment weekends, then we'll be having another one in June this year, and I heartily recommend it. There's something there for everyone. And the other bit of news is that we are working very closely with the Parish Council to fight climate change, and that's a very welcome step. So please do watch this space for further information. So what does the Zero Carbon Group do? Well, we raise awareness for climate change, but increasingly we're looking at the global position as well. To have a reliable energy supply system, it has to be affordable, it has to be sustainable, and it has to be secure. And with the situation on the Ukraine border at the moment, that's looking a little bit frail potentially at the moment. We also promote energy efficiency. We're trying to help reduce fuel consumption, especially fossil fuels, gas, oil, coal. And we're promoting renewable forms of energy. We also provide support to the village and villagers on energy matters, and increasingly, and Peter Hague is going to shine a light on this subject. Increasingly, we're looking at fuel poverty. As the price of energy increases in the manner that it is, fuel poverty is becoming a much more important factor in our society. We help people on these fronts as much as we can by signposting them to sources of assistance. Now, the structure of tonight's talk is we're going to start with a talk by Peter Hague. Peter has worked in the energy industry for over 30 years, and he's run national retail and trading businesses. He now advises clients on strategy and the structure of energy markets, and I've had prior sight of what he's going to do, and it's going to be really interesting. We're then going to take a 10-minute break, and then follow that up with Marijke Schmidt, who's going to talk about home energy efficiency, and she's going to be giving us some great ideas for what we can all start and do, and signpost some further help for everybody. Then followed by Glenn Thistlethwaite, who will be focusing on reducing heat loss, and he'll be explaining to you what the home energy kit is, and where you can get to see it, and hopefully it will make a contribution, no matter how small. Every little helps. And you know, I would urge everybody to try and take the opportunity to go and have a look at it. Finally, we'll have David Bartlett, who's going to bring in some technology. Hi, David. With thermal, and talk about thermal imaging, what we can do with thermal imaging, and also show us some energy monitors that we have. Then we'll wrap up with a question and answer session, and then the intent is that by 9:15 we'll all be out of the door. Two final adverts. In the next few days, within the hub in the village, the Zero Carbon Group will be putting a display up, and I would urge you, please, if you can, go and see it. It will be worthwhile, and hopefully it will bring some valuable ideas and inspiration to people. And the final one, on behalf of the Environment Group and the Zero Carbon Group, it's, you know, we invite you to help with your home efficiency measures and any other energy related matters. If we don't have the answers, we'll say we don't have the answers, but we're here to help. So please don't hesitate to call on us if need be. So without further ado, I'll welcome onto the platform Peter Hague. I'll see you, Peter. He's there somewhere. Thank you very much, and we'll see you shortly. Peter.
Thanks very much, John. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Marvellous. Right, share screen. Let's see if this works. There you go. Can you all see that? Marvellous. Right. So I hope you're all sitting comfortably, because this will take about 20 minutes to rattle through why we're all going to pay a good deal more for our electricity and gas in the coming year. The chart on my opening slide is the price of gas over the course of last year. So it's gone up from about 40 pence a therm to over £4 at one point. And that is all about the presentation and ultimately how it impacts all of us. So I'll look at some of the global reasons. I'll look at the price cap, which you may have read about in the papers, why so many energy companies are going bust, and most importantly, what it means in terms of prices. Delighted to take questions at the end, and as Rick said, if we can use the chat function and stuff like that, that would be great. There is at the moment a global gas shortage. This isn't a UK thing, it's not even a European thing, it's the whole wide world. Why? Because you might recall that we've had a slight pandemic thing, and that really led to people not making stuff, and that meant that people weren't buying gas. So there were particularly low stocks in Asia. China have doubled the level of LNG, and LNG is liquefied natural gas, and you can ship it around the world. It tends to come from Australia, Qatar, US. And a big pipe that was supposed to connect Russia with the top of Germany was due to complete late last year, isn't probably not going to complete until late this year. And the thing with any commodity, oil, whatever it might be, is that it tends to go to the highest bidder. And the diagram on the right-hand side shows where we get our gas from. So most of it still comes from the North Sea. It's not done yet by any means. The next big chunk comes from Norway, and we like the Norwegians, they're sound people. And then we've got a fair chunk from Qatar, which is the LNG, which is the ships I was talking about, and the US. So that's kind of the picture. And last autumn was the least windy since 1961, which meant that our gas-fired power stations were used more than ever. We also don't have that much gas storage. Gas storage is basically a big hole in the ground where you can stick gas. It's not particularly sophisticated, but it is kind of useful. We did have a big hole in the ground where we stuck a lot of gas, but we shut it back in 2017. And why, you might add, am I whittering on about gas all the time? Because gas-fired power stations generate about 40% of all the electricity we use, and it sets the price. So whatever happens to gas happens to electricity, as the graph in the bottom right shows. So let's move on to the types of domestic tariff. So this is dual fuel, which is electricity and gas. And there's basically three. The standard variable tariff, otherwise known as the SVT, and that's the tariff that you end up on if you've never moved or your deal runs out. That's what you go on to. All energy suppliers have to offer one, and about half of all households were on it a couple of years ago, and the price is set by the regulator. many of us shop around and get a fixed price deal. Typically 12 months, can be as long as 3 years, and they will fix the tariff, the amount you pay for your electricity and gas. Generally, in the past, shopping around saved you money and they were the cheapest. And some of us will have a prepayment meter that uses either a token or a smart card that can be topped up. The newsagents are online. There are probably more of those than you might imagine. Many millions of households have a prepayment meter. And then for those with storage heaters, there's Economy 7. The price cap was introduced back in 2018. And it was introduced to stop people from being ripped off. So if you'd never moved supplier, then on average, you were paying the dotted blue line. And the regulator said, that's not fair. And the orange bars show what it would have been if the cap had been enforced. And it was designed to stop people from being ripped off for their loyalty. So if you'd stayed with British Gas forever, you were probably paying about 15% more than somebody who shopped around. However, it was never designed to protect you from the rising wholesale price. So, how's your bill made up? And again, the regulator deals in sort of an average customer, and this is what an average customer's bill looks like. So this is for both electricity and gas. And it might surprise you that the cost of the electricity gas, which is what is called wholesale there, is actually less than half the bill. A good chunk of it is the pipes and wires that get it to your house. Then you've got operating costs for the whole shebang, which is billing and metering and goodness knows what. About 160 quid for social and environmental schemes. You got 5% VAT, a small profit for the supplier, and a few other bits and pieces. But that's how your bill is made up. And the thing that we're looking at, if you can see my arrow, is those wholesale costs, which is the electricity and gas that you use in your house. So why are they all going bust? And that's a kind of list that's reasonably up to date. Another one has gone bust since. But it affects about 4 million households in the UK. And the answer to that question is the cap was put in place before gas prices shot up. And the people supplying your electricity and gas were caught out by that. And every customer in the UK at the moment is pretty much loss-making. And loss-making to a very large extent, as much as £1,000 per customer for this winter. If your supplier does go bust, take a meter reading of your electricity and your gas meter, and then wait to be contacted by the new supplier. My advice, and that of the regulator, is not to move until you've heard from your new supplier. So what about this price cap thing then? Well, it was all going very well. You know, I mean, it was to stop customers from being ripped off. And it's set for a 6-month period. So in April to September of last year, the average customer was on £1,138. And then over winter, it went up a bit. That would be set back in August. And for this winter, you're paying £1,277. Yeah, it's gone up a bit, 12% in fact. But the future is bleak. So the estimate for this summer, starting April, is £1,907. So it will go up by 50%. And at current prices, that will rise for the same household using the same amount of electricity and gas, £2,100, pretty much double from where it was last summer. Those prices are for electricity and gas and cover a 12-month period. And that is why what happens around the world in terms of gas impacts us here in Addingham. And that is why it is so much in the news. So 50% increase over next summer is what the analysts are saying, and a further increase for the winter. At the moment, with everything that is happening in Russia and all the other challenges in the world, it's not going down anytime soon. So I kind of rattled through that because I wanted to get to some of the core messages and to give people time for thought and reflect. There are people in our constituency, and possibly even in our village, who have to make a choice between heating and eating. The article there with the picture is from The Guardian, and they reckon about a quarter of households will find themselves in what they call fuel stress from the 1st of April. Nobody knows when gas prices will correct themselves. If you think to the crises that we've had in oil in the past, in the 70s, in the 80s, Gulf War times, things of that nature, nobody knew how long it would take, but it generally isn't too quick. And the next price cap will be announced on the 7th of February. So that's an important date, and that will tell you exactly how much customers will be paying from that date. So what help is available? The first point of call always ought to be your energy provider. The supplier must offer support to vulnerable customers and should offer support to all customers. Be that advice on the level of direct debit, be it whether you're in credit balance or not, or whatever it might be. Citizens advice, National Energy Action, Money Saving Expert, and the regulator themselves, Ofgem, all offer good advice on their website in both how to reduce your energy consumption, which Marika will come on to later, or indeed what to do if you're having difficulty paying the bill. In terms of winter fuel payments, and many of the agencies offer advice as to whether someone qualifies for these. There's the warm home discount, the winter fuel payment, and the cold weather payment. And well, I've included the links there, and you can look it up and see whether you are eligible. And the NEA do great work. It's a charity about supporting people, either with direct advice or in terms of thinking about appropriate energy efficiency even, and heating measures. But there are many other agencies that are working incredibly hard in order to support those that need it most. So in kind of, conclusion, energy prices are going up. That is a fact. You could easily see your energy costs double over the course of the year. It remains to be seen whether the government do anything, but so far they've not intervened. It might resolve itself quickly, in which case gas prices will come down and we'll all breathe a sigh of relief. But at the moment, the signs are that it'll be here for a while yet. And the purpose of my presentation really is just to bring awareness of what we all face, and also the fact that we can do something about it. And as was said at the start of the meeting, every little thing we do to reduce our energy bills saves us money and helps the planet. And both of those have got to be a good thing. And that is my presentation.
Thanks for that, Peter. On the introduction, I did say it was going to be thought-provoking and quite far-reaching, and it certainly was. We're a little bit ahead of schedule there, Jim. I don't know whether you want to take some questions now or deal with any questions that we've had in.
Thanks, John. Yeah, we've actually got Dr. Fontana has asked a question. Who pays the fuel companies for the gap between the cap and the true cost of wholesale wholesale cost of fuel?
No one. No one is the short answer. That's why they've all gone bust. Bulb went bust. It had 1.7 million customers, and the amount that the government have had to bail it out by is £1.7 billion. So £1,000 per customer for this winter. There's nearly 30 energy companies that have gone bust since the beginning of September, and the associated job losses of people that worked in those businesses, and people think, well, that's all right. I kind of think in other sectors it probably wouldn't be all right, but there you go.
I think as well, Peter, that come the 7th of February, when we get the new formula, the people who are going to be paying for the shortfall are going to be us. You know, the standout statistic to me in your talk was that energy prices are going to, electricity and gas prices are going to double for people, but by March 23. So that increase is what's going to fund the shortfall.
Absolutely right. Going forward, what it won't do is address the shortfall for this winter that those companies have faced. They will just take a massive, great hit on their accounts, and some of the numbers are just eye-watering. There was it's not just the UK. There was a business in Germany that had to ask its shareholders for an extra 10 billion just to see it through the winter. Ouch.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
There's a couple more questions come in, John. If you want me to, I'll read those out, if that's okay.
Yeah, go on, Jim, please.
Yeah. Jill has asked, which companies are most likely to survive, Peter?
It's a really good question. I guess the famous names, so British Gas, E.ON, EDF, OVO, probably, Octopus, and some of the smaller players. You know, I mean, you've got people like Ecotricity and stuff like that have a very loyal customer base and have their own wind turbines and stuff like that. But some of the ones that have gone by the wayside were good companies that were well run, but just could not manage these risks. As I said, if who you're with does go bust, two things to bear in mind. One of which is your credit balance is absolutely protected. So if you are owed money by that company, you will get it back. Those are the rules. And the second thing is take a meter reading and sit tight until you know who's taking it on. Marika's asked a question.
Yes, she has, Peter. Yeah, thanks.
What to do if your fixed term contract comes to an end? There's no point in shopping around. You go on that standard variable tariff and you look forward to the subsidies that your retailer is providing to you. There is no point. We looked at a fixed price deal, so we were paying about £1,300 a year, so pretty average, and the cheapest that I could find was over £2,000. So stay on that fixed price, stay on that standard variable tariff and sit it out. What's Ofgem doing? Snoozing. Ofgem are one of my, Ofgem is the regulator, and Ofgem is one of my sort of pet subjects, not in a good way. Yeah, they've been snoozing for a long time. You'd say about a decade, which is probably, you know, I don't know of any creature that hibernates for that long. But they are sort of waking up to it, but you know, far too late. There's many shortcomings that, as a regulator who is there to protect the interests, particularly of domestic customers, you kind of think, what have they done? The one thing in their defence, I would say, is that the high gas prices are not a UK issue. There are high gas prices in Germany. There are high gas prices in Japan. It is a global issue because that is the way the world is at the moment. So much as we'd like to think that you know, our problems are with Ofgem, some of them are, it is a global issue. And we should be grateful that the North Sea is still producing the bulk of our gas.
There was another question there as well. Peter, have you picked that up?
How sensitive is our energy supply to wind? I mean, you know, there's been huge investment in the last decade in wind generation. And you know, the offshore, onshore, good stuff. But if the wind doesn't blow, which is what happened in the autumn this year, then you've got to generate your electricity with something else. And that's predominantly gas. Pretty much all of the coal-fired power stations have either shut or will be closing very soon. You know, I think in terms of the thing with wind is you need other stuff, batteries, for example, to be able to take out the peaks and troughs. And you see people invest in that, you know, as we sit here tonight. There are many battery schemes that are in the process of being developed. High prices, if you think back to the 70s, for those of us that can remember that far back, what did high prices in petrol do? It meant you went for a more efficient car. That was the trigger for smaller engines, more efficient. Well, yeah, that's what happens. And so high prices, as said there, is it does provide that incentive to fit those LED light bulbs, to sort out the drafts, whatever it might be. And you know, that's not a bad thing to do. The downside to it, of course, is that some in society are in drafty old properties and fuel poor, and they are least able to help themselves in that regard. Could we produce more gas? Yes. The Scottish government has just turned down an application for a new gas field, bless them, which is kind of a bit bizarre. Gas has got a bit of a bad name at the moment because it's a fossil fuel, but it's kind of useful and it does power an awful lot. You know, 40% of our electricity comes from gas. So, yeah, we could do more. When is North Sea going to run out? Now, people are saying North Sea is going to run out. When I started in the industry, which was 1990, oh, it'll only last a couple of years, lad. Well, it's still alive and well and still quite important. And from an engineering point of view, we've got really adept at getting the last dregs out. But probably North Sea will see us out once we get more into the 2030s and more into electric heating and heat pumps and that sort of stuff. I think the increased gas exploration is a really interesting one because people don't want to do it. The Scots government don't want to do it because it's not seen as green. But if you've got your own stuff, then it does reduce your reliance on other people. And you know, you've seen that in the US with fracking, and fracking sort of works in the US because it's a big place, and it's terrible elsewhere because we're not in a big country. But it has reduced their reliance on imported gas to the point that they're now an exporter. So there's lots of big strategic questions to be answered, and answered quickly, in terms of what is right for the UK going forwards, because it's tough at the moment. But as I said several times, this isn't a UK problem, it's at least a European, Asian problem. And that is the world in which we now live. And we're used to that with petrol. You're used to seeing things happening that you see on the telly, and then you pay more at the pumps. Doesn't matter whether it's Gulf War or something's kicking off in some part of the world, you kind of get your head around that. Gas is now the same. There you go. Any other questions?
I saw one more.
One on the bottom there, Peter.
I saw one more, Peter. Why didn't we see it coming?
That is a brilliant question, because I'll be honest with you, I've been in the industry 30 years, I've run retail businesses, and I didn't. And I know a lot of people in the industry who said no, you know, because the issue is there's not a fundamental shortage of gas. It's not like we're running out of the stuff. There's plenty of gas around the world. As in the past, there's been plenty of oil. Trouble is, it's not in the right place at the right time. And so, but to see something go up, you know, from 40 pence to £4 in a year, that is just a basic commodity. You know, you think of, you know, what's petrol at the moment? 150 a litre? You imagine paying 15 quid for this stuff, 10 times more in the space of 12 months. And that's the size of it. That is how I can explain it. So no, people didn't see, we've always had volatility in energy prices. That comes with the territory. But nobody really saw, the regulators, government, industry, did not see that it would go up tenfold in a matter of months. Rough decision in 2017 was short-sighted. Yeah. Probably, I think, is the answer to that. It required a lot of work to keep it open. It actually has great potential to be a users for carbon capture. Well, that's a different story for a different day. But we saw at the time that these ships that were full of gas could be used as some form of other form of storage. And they, you know, hindsight's a marvelous thing. Do you spend a billion in 2017 to keep the thing open and would never have used it up until this year? Or, I don't know. I kind of like storage because you've actually got physical stuff, but I'm kind of old like that. Did I say 2030 for North Sea running out? Heck, that's 10 years away. Yes, I did, and I probably didn't mean it quite that way. It has been in decline for at least 15 years. It isn't going to suddenly run out as in turn the tap off, but it's probably going to stabilise around 2030s because we will be switching to heat pumps and other fuels. So I wouldn't rush out just yet and put me gas fire or whatever, or gas cooker in the bin, because, you know, we'll have to kind of wait and see. But at the moment, it's keeping the lights on. Well, that, and dare I say it, a bit of coal is keeping the lights on tonight, but I'll keep that quiet.
Right, John, I think we'll give Peter a rest now, shall we?
I think you should go on mastermind, Peter, specialist subject, the global energy crisis.
Well,
Well,
I don't,
I've been doing it for 30 years, so yeah.
Jim, can I raise a question?
just hang on a second, Harry. Hang on a sec. Yes, okay, but there's one more question, Peter, from Harry. Harry, go ahead.
You haven't mentioned nuclear energy. Why
No.
have we not developed more nuclear power stations which make us less reliant on imported energy?
Well, we're starting to with Hinkley, and they're thinking that Sizewell will have another new nuclear power station. The trouble is that they're really expensive, and they're usually massively over budget and very late. And the only two that have been built in Europe recently, one's in Finland, which is 6 years late, and the flagship one, which is in Brittany, is again very late indeed. But you're right. I mean, about 20%, 1/5 of our electricity comes from nuclear at the moment, and it's served us well for decades. It's got bad press because people think of Fukushima and everything else, but it's kind of useful stuff. You've seen in the press that Rolls-Royce have come up with building small nuclear reactors, but again, whether the public want to have those in their vicinity, who knows? But you're absolutely right. Having a sensible mix of fuels is a good thing to do.
Yeah, yeah.
The one thing I probably should have said earlier is to bear in mind is that before all this kicked off, standard variable tariff was here and the fixed price deal was always cheaper. And what's happened is that. So the standard variable tariff is cheaper and the fixed price is now up here.
Picking up on that, Peter, and reflecting on the conversations that we've had towards the end there, there are strong arguments for saying that we should be exploring on the UK continental shelf for more oil and gas. It would give us more control on prices, increase government revenue, reduce the market volatility. And there's also a financial argument along the same lines for nuclear that Harry raised as well. The downside is that there's always a cost to it. I'm not talking about money, but those costs are environmental impacts. Now, I mentioned the energy trilemma before, which is the fact that we need to have an affordable energy supply. We need to have a secure energy supply, but most importantly, we have to have a sustainable energy supply. And that's where the work that we're doing in terms of reducing carbon and halting climate change comes in. We have to reduce energy consumption. We have to start and insulate better. We've got to start and build better. We've got to start and retrofit better. And we have to change as a world. We have to change as a society. And that, there's going to be a high degree of change necessary, and it's going to be rapid pace as well. So, we could talk about it all night. I'm sure it's a fascinating subject. But this leads us into energy efficiency. And our next star this evening is Marika. Welcome, Marika. Marika Schmidt is an expert in financing energy projects and is a positive addition to the Zero Carbon Group. And I'm delighted to welcome her tonight. She's going to give us some tips on home energy efficiency and tell us where to go for some more information. So, Marika, if I can introduce you now, please.
This has been a bit of joint work, I think, between Glenn, David, Rick and I. Okay, so I can't take all of the credit for this. So we've been bouncing off our ideas around the whole theme, home energy efficiency, and what's probably important to mention here. Why is energy efficiency important? I think you've just heard the energy bills are going up, but there's obviously also other reasons why it's important. Buildings are responsible for almost 40% of the UK's energy consumption and carbon emissions. saves money on your energy bills. We've just talked about that. It improves your comfort. And the UK housing stock is amongst the oldest and least efficient in Europe. And major demands are created by water and space heating. So what you do in your home really affects, you know, the energy bills and CO2 emissions. And I've got a little slide here for you, how we compare. Rick has kindly provided this. So as you can see, UK is red. Some of the other countries like France is orange. And what it shows you is what the home temperature loss is after 5 hours. And you can see quite some stark differences there ranging from the UK with 3% through to Spain, let's say 2.2%. Obviously, it's warmer in Spain, but still, you know, this graphic really illustrates that we really need to do something about home energy efficiency. So you might ask yourselves, but what can I do? You know, and there's obviously what we call the sort of low cost energy saving tips. And there's a lot of information out there on the Energy Saving Trust website. And I just thought I might do a little summary in terms of what you can save. So I'll go to the pictures, I think, first. You all have a chimney, I suppose, okay? And one really easy thing to do is to purchase what is called a chimney draft excluder. And I ought to say here, obviously it depends on how you heat your home. So please be careful, of course, if you've got a gas-fired fireplace or something, then you can't use this here, the sheet wall draft excluder. But there's other options available, such as terracotta caps, etc. Also, if you're not using your chimney, then it's a good idea to decommission it. Replace the standard bulbs with LED light bulbs. Switch off standby. Get a water efficient shower head. Turn off the lights. Using heating controls and professional draft proofing. I've sort of just put some numbers against this really, so that you can see what you would sort of roughly save. Obviously, with energy bills going up, you would save more next summer than at the moment. I've already talked about the sort of chimney cap. On the right-hand side here, you see the LED bulb that you can use and replace all of your existing bulbs, and then the heating controls. Here is a picture, so you can imagine how this would look like. What kind of longer term improvements can I make? You might ask yourself that, and this is obviously a little bit more difficult. It usually involves building works, and this is a picture of a whole house retrofit. So ideally, you would look at the whole house and see where you can insulate it. So there's options available. Loft insulation, for example, is a really sort of relatively easy measure that you can take to insulate the roof, for example. Obviously, you can install solar panels, and I'm aware that some of us already have solar panels on their roof. Double glazing is obviously a good idea. Temperature controls. And then, of course, you can also insulate external walls, for example. But obviously, that's really a building project and will take time and effort. Decommission your chimney is another option we just talked about. So I think it might be a really good idea to talk about energy performance certificates. And you've probably seen these little logos here, which is usually used to illustrate that. So there's ratings from A to G. So A means your home is very efficient, so it doesn't lose a lot of heat. And G means it's very inefficient, so it loses a lot of heat. The energy performance certificate includes information on how energy efficient a building is. It also includes information on improvements you could make to the property and what the energy and CO2 savings would be if you made the improvements. And EPCs, energy performance certificates, are usually valid for 10 years from the date of issue. And you can download the EPCs from the government website. I've been on there. as I did the presentation and checked out our own home, of course. This is a new website, so it's changed. If you've recently, you know, been trying to find it as a new website, which is this one, and I'm providing a link here to the government website. And what you can do on the government website is really you just put in your postcode and your address details, and then what happens is your EPC comes up, and you can see, you know, how well your home is doing and how you can improve your home in general and insulate it. So the question is then, if your home doesn't have an EPC for any reason, you know, it's older than 10 years, let's say, then you can obviously get a new energy certificate. It's also important if you're planning to sell your home, because there are now a requirement, you know, you have to do that before you can sell it. So the question is, of course, how can I find an EPC assessor? And again, there is a government website that includes details on all of the EPC assessors in the country. So again, you can put in your postcode and find out who's operating in the area. It's really important that you check that the EPC assessor is fully accredited. And there's two accreditation schemes, sort of standard accreditation schemes, Amherst and Stroma. And the cost of an assessment varies by assessor and the size of the property. We're talking about £80 to £100 normally. That's what it would cost you to do an EPC. And after the assessment, the assessor will give you a digital copy of your certificate. And this is also important when you sell your property, as I said earlier on. The energy performance certificates are also important when you want to insulate your home. And the reason why they're important is because if you want to access any government grants, they require an EPC normally. So if you're planning any sort of insulation measures and you haven't got an up-to-date one, then the first step would be to get an updated EPC. So let's assume you have done all of the easy measures. You've done draft excluding. You've got LED lighting. You've looked at your letterbox, insulated that. You've done all of that, and you want to go ahead with the more complicated measures, such as, for example, external wall insulation or loft insulation. The question then is, how can I ensure a high quality installation? How do I get a really good service in terms of the buildings works that you might want to do? I think it's a really good idea to use local tradesmen that have a good reputation. So ask around, find out who is working in the industry in the local area. Make sure that the tradesmen have the correct accreditations for the improvements that you want to make. And I have included a couple of the certifications that you might want to look at. A really important one is the BBA certificate. So for any insulation materials that you might want to use, they normally, the tradesmen normally have a certificate for the materials, and the BBA is the body that oversees that. So this little logo, you might actually see this around here in Addingham when there's local tradesmen on their vans, etc. And that basically shows you that they've had approval for the insulation form that they're using. And so there is quality control behind this. You know, they get checked out on a regular basis whether they're doing a good job. Obviously, for anything to do with gas boilers, the gas safe register is, I think, worth mentioning here. Make sure that it's gas registered. And then for the other energy efficiency measures, there is two certifications that are really important. The first one is the Pass 2030 certificate, and the second one is the Trustmark certificate. And both of them are important when you want to access grant funding in support of the buildings work. And again, what happens is that the tradesmen, they get visits, official visits, and what happens is the quality of the workmanship gets checked, and there's rules around how they install the meshes on your homes. So it's a very good thing to check that with your sort of chosen installer tradesmen that they have these certifications. The other thing is really to get advice from organizations such as Yes Energy Solutions, the Centre for Sustainable Energy, or Energy Saving Trust. Yes Energy Solutions is based in Yorkshire, and they administer a lot of the home insulation schemes on behalf of the government. So they can advise you on you know, what to do with your property, what some of the best solutions would be. They can help you with finding an EPC assessor. They can also help you with accessing grant funding to bring the costs of the energy efficiency solutions down. The Centre for Sustainable Energy is based in Bristol, also a good organization to get in touch with. And the thing to say about the Centre for Sustainable Energy is that they're independent and not commercial. So they're a charity. So you really get good advice from them, because obviously what's important for them is to provide you with the best advice that you can get. Yes Energy Solutions, I should say, is a commercial operation. So maybe just be aware of that, but they're really good in administering government schemes. Energy Saving Trust is a bit of a mixed bag, obviously has government support. Again, very good for information in terms of the energy efficiency measures that you can do on your home. And as I said, yeah, they can help with government funding. So there is a number of schemes out there, such as the Greener Homes Fund or the Energy Company Obligation Funding. Energy company obligation funding is quite complicated. The energy suppliers have to provide that. And the best option for you as a householder is to go with an organization such as Yes Energy Solutions, who can actually secure the subsidy for you, right? Because the subsidy depends on the measure you choose. So they sort of act as an umbrella organization and secure the subsidies for you. And I think that is already the end of my presentation, and I'm going to hand over to Glenn and to David, I think.
That's correct. Welcome,
I can't see
Glenn.
them.
Welcome, Glenn, to the floor to talk us through what we're doing to help residents, followed up by David Bartlett. Glenn.
Hello. Here I am. Thank you very much. And thank you for the invite, for coming along to give these presentations, even though we were third choice, but there we are. We'll move on. I guess what I'm going to cover is really part of the process that the team has gone through to try and identify what we can do to help the people of Addingham and what can we do locally. So Mareka and co put together a grant to Bradford Council, and we got some money to spend on a few things. So one of the items that we've put together is a kit, a demonstration kit, if you like, that you can pick up. It's going to be stored post-COVID, well, not post-COVID, but it's going to be stored at the hub above the library in Addingham, looked after by Wendy Green. It's in a toolbox, and it's got a bunch of measurement devices and samples of various things that you can take home and try out and have a look around your house and try and identify those quick wins, really the bit that Mareka started with at the first bit of her presentation, all of those first steps to identify quick wins. They might be small, but they all add up. So we've got a few pictures there. So there's the energy efficiency demonstration kit, which you can borrow and test things around your house. David in a minute is going to talk about, we've also purchased a thermal imaging camera, which will enable a much more sort of rigorous housing energy survey of your house to get a good picture of where the heat's going. And also, as John mentioned earlier, as of later this week or early next week, the Addingham Hub is going to have a lot of presentational materials. We've got a presentation board that we're going to have all the information on what we're doing here, as well as a few of the other things that the team is doing, flagged for about a month in the Addingham Hub. So Mareka, if you could move it on to the next slide. I don't have a huge amount to say. This is a picture of the main bits of the main tools that are available in the kit you can borrow. The main ones are the two big ones left and right there. So we've got the one on the right, the Black & Decker thing on the right, is a thermal leak detector. So it's kind of like a laser gun that you point it around your house, and it goes red for warm, blue for cold. So you can look around all of your the areas where drafts normally come in and see what's going on. Look around all of your windows, where often you get a lot of drafts in your kitchen, where the floor meets the wall and there's gaps in the way things are being corked up and put together. So you can use that Black & Decker thermal leak detector to look around your home and to identify where are the drafts. It can also show you if you've got a bit of a gap in your wall, in the insulation behind the wall, or if you've got a damp patch on your wall that's letting heat go out. It'll also show those sort of things up, which are not as easy to fix, but at least you can identify that that's a potential issue. So that's a really handy piece of kit that you can borrow out of this kit. The one on the left is a plug-in monitor, which many of you are probably familiar with, but that's something that you can use to plug in appliances around your house and just learn what is using how much electricity, and to learn about the savings you could make by turning them off or changing things. So you could test different washing machine cycles and different dishwasher cycles. You could see how much it costs you. It can tell you how much electricity you're using, and also it can translate it into the cost if you put your tariff in. So you can work out approximately how much it's costing you to boil a kettle with just one cup, or boil a full kettle. Now, I know these are things that a lot of people know, but at least this will help you benchmark all the different appliances around your house and understand exactly how much is being used by different appliances when it's on standby or when it's left on. Or is that eco cycle on your washing machine really that much better than the normal one? Who knows? So you can use these, this to sort of work that out. The other things that are in the kit, the tools are there. So you've got a hydrometer to work out the humidity around your house, which is important to understand for, if it's too humid or not. It can have an effect on how the energy stays in your house or not. The radiator, you've got a radiator key. So if people need to bleed their radiators, that's something there for them to do. And then the bottom left is a thermometer that you can use for your fridge and your freezer. So the idea is you put that in your fridge or your freezer, you'll leave it for half an hour and it'll tell you, is it operating in the optimum zone, or do you need to turn it up or down in terms of performance, so that it's operating at just the right temperature, not doing too much work. In addition to these things that are kind of monitoring and trying to help you work out where you're spending your money, there's a few samples of other things that are in the kit. So there are some LED light bulbs, there are some samples of draft excluders, letterbox draft excluders. So you can, replace your bulb with the LED bulb, work out how much you would save if you changed all of your light bulbs over to that. So that's it really in a nutshell. There's a few things to try, to go around your house, do those, make those first steps, have a look at where you think you can make the quick wins, and that might kick you up to wanting to go on to do a more rigorous energy assessment. And that's where the thermal imaging camera comes in. So I think at that point, I'll hand over to David.
Hello, everybody. Can you all hear me? Oh, good. Right, let's go on. I mean, we've heard tonight some very interesting material. I mean, particularly the fact that the less energy you lose in your house, the less energy you've got to buy in. And that's going to be particularly pertinent. And several people have mentioned it. And, it's going to become more and more appropriate as things go on. And measures for, should we call it, ameliorating these are going to be much, much better. Now, let's just quickly go on to a few things. Here's an energy monitor, as Glenn just described. It's very simple. It has the pins on that side. You plug into the socket, and then all you do is you plug your device into that, And then you have a variety of things. Instructions are within the box. You can see how long it's been operating for, what the load is, and then you can see what the kilowatt hours used will be, and then you can work out the cost. I believe we did a little report, and I believe that's accessible from the website, as far as I know. And it shows some, you know, Glenn's just mentioned the fact that light bulbs. I mean, I knew LED light bulbs are better than filament ones, but not until I actually did it and compared it and wrote notes and wore my white coat with my spatula in the top pocket was I convinced. My wife drove her mad, because every time she tried to do something, I'd say, hold on, let's just plug this in first. So everything she did for about a week, I had to go and do, and I made a little note of it. But it does give some surprising results. But I mean, a lot of it, when you look back at it, is just common sense. But you need sometimes a bit of backup to show that that common sense is true. And yes, you can read it in some of the journals, and you think, yeah, but it won't work in Addingham. But it does, you know, and you can do that yourself. So do borrow one. They're very useful, and you just make some pricing. And while I'm talking, just 5 screens below, I see John Hutchinson, who I haven't seen for years. So hello, John, nice to see you. Right, the second thing is the thermal imaging camera. It's really quite small, fantastic. It's very powerful, small and powerful, and I don't think it's going to operate properly on the screen. Again, there are you will see. I know John has put there's going to be one in the hub display, some good ideas about how your house looks. You can either do things in what's called grayscale, that's black and white, which is the ones police use. If you ever see these things where police are chasing criminals and they see a white dot behind a tree and they know that's the criminal, that's one you can use, or you can have different colors. And there are a variety of ways. I can't really go into it at the moment, but there are a variety of techniques you can use to show things. But I reckon a survey, well, a look-see, half an hour to an hour per house. And it's got to be really at this time of the year, when it's cold, either in the morning or the late afternoon. Please get in touch and ask for one. I'm a bit behind times with my surveys for a variety of personal reasons, but that's over now. So do get in touch and request one. The Americans, incidentally, used surveys, the thermal imaging cameras for surveys, when they're a lot of them buying property. So whereas we would have a survey done before we bought a property, the Americans particularly keen on using thermal imaging. And I've looked at a lot of their adverts, and what they say basically is, if this is a picture of what you see, that's what the average surveyor sees, but this is what I see, and you see different things. Glenn's mentioned a few bits and pieces which you can do with the thermal leak detector. The same thing's true with the thermal imaging camera. In my own house, for example, I was looking at the roof, the ceiling, which is onto the loft space, and I noticed that there was a very long black mark there, and I couldn't for the life of me work out what it was. So eventually I got myself up into the attic, and I don't know about your house, but ours is newish, and they make they use the roof trusses these days. You've got a limbo dance to get anywhere, which I suppose is the idea to prevent you going anywhere. But eventually I got through to this back space, and I found out there was a whole trench of where there should have been insulation. There was a great big bare patch, and that was the black space. Now the heat had been walking up there. The other thing I've noticed is on radiators. We saw the radiator key in Glenn's box of tricks. I looked at the radiator. You can tell when it's darkened at the top because there was no water there. It was airspace. So I bled it, and things hopefully are a lot better now. It's certainly not so noisy. I also found out where the pipes were leading to the radiator, and found out too that I was rather lucky when I put a nail to hang up a picture in the wall just recently, because I missed it by about a centimetre, thank heavens. So I mean, those little things are there. The other thing, which has again been alluded to, there's some very simple things. Windows and doors. Double sealed units are fantastic, yes, but it's the way the window, the frame fits into the round the window unit and the way the frame fits into the wall and the building. Those are the places where there are leaks, and I can see signs of the colour showing where I'm deficient, and so I've got to do something to those. All these little things come in handy, and they're all going to save money, because you're not going to have to pour so much energy in to get the same degree of comfort in the house. I mean, I don't want to go on about the theories of thermal imaging cameras. I'll leave that to questions, but largely that's it. Do borrow one of these and find out for yourself. Very simple to use, and do request a survey so we can have a look with you at your house. As I said, half an hour to an hour, and then we can find out little places where there may be problems, because can't promise that we will find everything. There may be problems where it might be worthwhile you getting some technical advice in, or it would show perhaps some simple solutions, and by simple I mean relatively inexpensive as well. So I'll leave it there because it's nearly question and answer time. So please come back to me.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Thank you very much, Marika. Thank you very much. Excuse me. 3 great presentations, full of some really interesting stuff.